In today's news, a financial crash is imminent. Many are likening it to the black swan, a crash that is extremely rare, has severe impacts, and in hindsight, it was obvious. It's so obvious, but the Fed are ignoring this crisis and slowly losing control. In fact, yesterday, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell told the House Financial Services Committee the central banks want more evidence that inflation is slowing sustainably before cutting interest rates this year. But the truth is, the evidence shows right now that inflation is in fact rising and the Fed are ignoring this. In a post here from Professor Stones, he states the reason why is because instead of the widely used CPI, Consumer Price Index, the Fed is relying on a custom index, the PCE, also known as the Personal Consumption Expenditure Index, which is less accurate and artificially low. We could hear more exactly why in this video. Pay very close attention.
I recently mentioned how inflation is rising again despite Jerome Powell's best hopes and prayers. In fact, since October, annualized CPI went from under 1% to almost 2% in November, nearly 3% in December, and now almost 4% at 3.73%. And yet the Fed has been silent. Why? Because they don't look at the CPI. They've got their own special number called the Personal Consumption Expenditure, or PCE, index. The problem is there's two big flaws with the PCE, which make it less accurate as well as artificially low. So the Fed is effectively blinding itself. Starting with accuracy, people read inflation as the cost to households, to the American people. As in, if CPI goes up 10%, stuff costs 10% more. The problem is the PCE includes government. This matters because government spends almost half of what's spent in this country, thanks to the income tax and the Fed itself. How PCE measures? In short, it updates too frequently to be accurate. It's always a downward bias. The index underreports inflation. Because people avoid expensive things, they don't avoid cheap things. The more frequently you update the weights, the worse the bias gets. So naturally, the Fed chose the most biased one to work with. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com, governments universally manipulate statistics to hide the damage they caused. But the Fed doubled down, blinding themselves with the rosiest pair of glasses on the shelf. This raises the odds the Fed will ignore rising prices until, once again, they lose control.
There is more evidence of that here again from Professor Stones, as the federal debt is now up $100 billion in just 4 days. We are now on track for $37 trillion in debt by the end of this year and $40 trillion by the end of next year. $3 trillion increase in debt a year, which is insane. This is not sustainable by any stretch of the imagination. We are going to enter a crisis that is worse than the 2008 financial collapse, 100%. And we have early warning signs already coming here from Good Morning Crypto. Warning signs of a massive stock market collapse is imminent.
I want to raise my hand because you make such a good point. You know, now advising 28% allocation. Well, if anything, I think, listen, and what have we seen? Billions and billions and billions of shares being sold at the same time in the general stock market, ladies and gentlemen. And let me tell you, let's mix those two understandings. So Jeff Bezos and JP Morgan and everybody else out here is selling off massive positions of their stock shares. And I just saw somebody else this morning, I can't remember who it was. And now BlackRock's telling their clients 28% allocation instead of 2 to 5%. Exactly. This is the biggest signal you're ever going to need to know and understand that there's a huge collapse and correction coming in the traditional markets. And this flight to quality, as they call it at BlackRock, is absolutely a hedge for their clients, as the rest of the market is going to get decimated if they don't find some high ground to stand on.
This has all the makings of a black swan event. Now, why is this happening? Well, simply put, crisis needs to happen for there to be a change. The government are ignoring this crisis because they want to implement CBDCs, another form of control, so they can control your finances. CBDCs are a tool of surveillance. The good news, however, is that XRP will be a bridge for CBDCs worldwide. So, with the inevitable implementation of CBDCs, we will also see the rise of Ripple and XRP and a new financial system. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Godspeed, good day, and good night.